What happened today in the Supreme Court is nothing short of a historic moment that will be etched in the annals of American legal history. During oral arguments, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson delivered a surgical, devastating rebuttal to President Donald Trump's claim of absolute presidential immunity, dismantling it in seconds with a single, piercing question. Can you imagine the weight of that question? Could a president order the assassination of a political rival and face no criminal charges? This was not a hypothetical tossed out lightly. It exposed the raw and dangerous core of Trump's legal defense, a defense that could single-handedly redefine the limits of presidential power in ways that threaten the very foundations of American democracy. Think about why this moment is so vital. The core question Justice Jackson posed unmasked a radical legal theory that presidents, even former presidents, can be immune from criminal prosecution for any acts performed while in office. This is not just legal jargon or abstract theory. What it means, in plain English, is that a president could commit the gravest crimes and stand above the law without consequence. Does that sound like the America we know? The America where the Constitution mandates that no one, not even the highest officeholder, stands above the law. This Supreme Court hearing was a battle for that very principle. The scene in the courtroom was electric, tense, and transformative. Justice Jackson sat patiently through Trump's attorney laying out an expansive theory so broad it would place presidents effectively above prosecution. Then, with laser focus, she asked the question that cut to the bone. When faced with the hypothetical of ordering an assassination of a political rival, the attorney struggled to answer. Why? Because defending that position meant endorsing a form of presidential autocracy, where no action, no matter how heinous, could be punished if it was claimed as an official act. Pause and let that sink in. Trump's legal team was forced, in front of the highest court in the land, to argue that the president can commit murder with impunity. This isn't a minor flaw in an argument, it's a constitutional crisis laid bare. Justice Jackson pointed out how such a position would undo centuries of American constitutional progress, effectively ushering in a monarchy cloaked in immunity and excess. The founders of this country fought a revolution precisely to prevent this kind of unchecked power, and here it was held up as a legitimate legal claim. This moment was more than a legal argument. It was a pivotal test of the values that hold the nation together: accountability, rule of law, and democracy. What does it mean if the president is above the law? What does it mean for every citizen if powerful political figures can act without fear of prosecution? Justice Jackson's questioning changed the tenor of the hearing. Other justices, including Justice Amy Coney Barrett, who was appointed by Trump, appeared visibly unsettled by the scope of the immunity claim. Questions about whether there could be any limits at all to this immunity grew louder. This was no longer a technical legal debate. It became a debate about whether America remains a constitutional republic or slides into autocracy. Justice Jackson's approach was powerful for its simplicity and clarity. Too often, Supreme Court hearings are full of complex hypotheticals, legal maneuvers, and jargon that can obscure the heart of the issue. But her questioning was direct and unyielding. She forced Trump's team to confront a reality that their argument tried to hide: the possibility of an authoritarian presidency with no legal restraint. The attorney's inability to provide a coherent limiting principle exposed their theory as untenable. This moment also symbolizes something deeply personal and profound. Justice Jackson, as the first black woman on the Supreme Court, carries a unique historical awareness of how unchecked power has been wielded to deny justice to vulnerable communities. Her dismantling of Trump's immunity claim was not just about the law, but about protecting the constitutional democracy that undergirds American society. She brought to the courtroom not just legal brilliance, but a profound moral clarity that showed the stakes were nothing less than the survival of democracy as we know it. Now, consider the implications beyond this courtroom drama. If the court accepts Trump's immunity argument, it would establish a precedent that future presidents could invoke to avoid prosecution regardless of their actions. It would make prosecuting presidents for any criminal behavior almost impossible. Prosecutors would be left in an impossible position trying to distinguish between official presidential acts and criminal misconduct. Absolutist immunity would pave the way for potential abuses only limited by the president's assertions. The consequences for constitutional law, separation of powers, and democratic governance would be staggering. Justice Jackson's intervention underscores the Supreme Court's role as a guardian rather than an enabler of executive excess. It takes immense courage to challenge a former president's powerful legal defense, especially in today's deeply polarized and politically charged climate. Her careful preparation and precise questioning reveal how a single justice, armed with clarity and commitment to constitutional principles, can protect the Republic from dangerous legal theories. This hearing also highlights the broader context in which these claims of immunity have intensified. Trump's legal team has tried to use extreme immunity arguments in multiple courts to delay or avoid prosecution for alleged crimes. Each attempt sought to place the presidency beyond legal reach, risking the principle that no one is above the law. Today's Supreme Court hearing was a critical juncture, where such arguments were put to the test before the nation's highest court. Justice Jackson's excoriating questioning may prove decisive for this case and future legal battles over executive power accountability. What does this mean for democracy? When presidents can escape criminal prosecution by declaring their acts official, democracy erodes into something unrecognizable, a system where might makes right, and power is unchecked by law. This threatens the very idea of a republic governed by laws, not rulers. Justice Jackson's stance reaffirms for all Americans that equality before the law is non-negotiable. The courtroom reaction after her questioning was immediate and profound. Chief Justice Roberts, often seen as a protector of the Supreme Court's institutional integrity, appeared visibly troubled by the implications of Trump's position. Justice Elena Kagan pressed on about whether there could be any limits to presidential immunity, driving the point home for the entire bench. Even some conservative justices appeared uncomfortable with the unbounded immunity Trump claimed. This moment crystallized the divide between authoritarian immunity and constitutional accountability. Moreover, Justice Jackson showed that complex constitutional issues can often be resolved by simply examining what the logical implications of a legal theory truly are. By forcing the attorney to confront the real-world consequences of absolute immunity, she removed all pretense and legal obfuscation. The authoritarian core of the argument was exposed plainly, showing that this is not a political controversy, but a constitutional emergency. What followed in the courtroom makes clear the stakes of this case are not confined to Trump alone. It touches on the future of presidential power, rule of law, and democratic governance. The ruling could affirm or reject a dangerous expansion of executive power that some have sought for decades. It may determine whether future presidents face criminal accountability or wield power above reproach. Justice Jackson's cutting questioning reminds us that the Supreme Court's legitimacy comes not from political loyalties, but from its commitment to uphold the Constitution fairly. When a court allows arguments that place anyone above the law, it betrays the American ideal of democracy. Her stance is a defense of that ideal, a beacon in times when the rule of law faces unprecedented assaults. If Trump's arguments were accepted, the consequences would be wide-reaching. The notion that the president needs immunity to function effectively was decisively rejected point-blank by Jackson. Every other public official, from senators to governors to judges, must operate within the bounds of criminal law while performing their duties. So should the president. Demanding exceptional treatment is rooted not in legal necessity, but in a desire for unchecked personal power. As Justice Jackson revealed, Trump's immunity arguments are not about protecting the presidency as an institution, but about protecting himself from accountability. This hypocrisy further exposes the dangers of granting blanket immunity. What is truly remarkable is how a single justice's prepared, precise questioning so comprehensively challenged one of the most powerful men in America and his legal team. It shows that the judicial system still has defenders willing to uphold constitutional principles against immense political pressure. The Supreme Court, often viewed as a divided and contentious body, demonstrated today how it can serve as a crucial bulwark against authoritarianism. Looking forward, this case will undoubtedly influence how presidential powers are interpreted for generations. It sets a precedent that no individual, not even a former president, stands above the law. This principle is the cornerstone of American democracy, a message reaffirmed by Justice Jackson in her clarion questioning. There is also an urgent lesson here for all Americans. Democracy is fragile and must be actively defended. When powerful individuals claim immunity from laws that govern everyone else, the principles of justice and fairness are threatened. The Supreme Court's role is to protect these principles, as was demonstrated in today's arguments. Finally, we must remember the power of clear and truthful legal reasoning. The precision and clarity of Justice Jackson's questioning cut through the noise and complexity that often surround constitutional debates. It reminds us that courts exist to protect democratic values and hold power accountable with courage and clarity. As the legal drama unfolds, it is critical for citizens to understand what's at stake. This isn't just about one case or one president. It is about whether America remains a nation of laws or slides into lawless rule. Will the Supreme Court rise to the challenge or falter? Justice Jackson's words today provide a roadmap for defending democracy and the rule of law. If you believe no one should be above the law, that accountability must be universal, and that the presidency must be subject to the same legal standards as anyone else, then this case is a beacon. Like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to keep up with these historic proceedings. Share your thoughts in the comments. How do you feel about presidential immunity? What does this mean for the future of American democracy? Let's keep this conversation alive, because democracy survives when informed citizens stand up for the rule of law and support those like Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, who protect our constitutional principles. The Supreme Court is watching, history is being made, and your voice matters.